The gentleman to my right or left, or however you're looking at this on the screen, his name is Franklin Ndekwe. He's a freight broker out of San Jose, California, and he had no brokerage experience before this, and went on, launched his brokerage in June of 2020. And in July of 2020, did over $25,000 in profit, not in revenue, but in margin, and an actual profit for his startup brokerage. So welcome to the Freight Broker Bootcamp Live, Franklin.
Hey, appreciate it, Dennis. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited because Franklin is a client of mine. We do, in addition to being a student of Freight Broker Bootcamp, he's also a coaching client. So I work with him very, very closely. I just wanted to be fully transparent to everybody about that I have an annual coaching program where I work with a very small select group of brokers. And Franklin happens to be one of those guys. So he's invested heavily into his business. So before we dive into the how-to and some of those things, give us a little bit of a background. I mean, how did you get to this point? I know you had some transportation experience. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Okay, so yeah, my background is pretty simple. So I grew up in San Jose, California. Went the route of going to school. My parents told me to go and get an education, and I thought that's and I originally actually similar to you, wanted to be a lawyer at one point in time, and I was pre-law and studying to do that. And then I guess around 22 or so, I caught the entrepreneurial bug, where I wanted to figure out how I could get myself to my goal was to be a millionaire. That's what my whole focus was. And I think when I got to college, one of my teachers said, because I wanted to be a lawyer, that if you wanted to be a lawyer, you had to go to school for, 4 years undergrad, 3 years in law school. And, after that, to be a millionaire, it'd probably take, be in your 40s, 50s, or so on and so forth. So I said, let me try my hand at business. So I went through the process of, trying everything. I was the guy that if I saw an ad on YouTube or on Google that said make money doing XYZ, I'd click on it, and try to figure out what. So I was doing, stock trading. I started a recruiting business, so many things in my 20s. But actually, eventually, one of the things that I actually landed into was the transportation industry. And after maybe, from 22 to 25 or so, after jumping around from business to business, I figured to myself, okay, you know what? I probably have to focus on one thing if I really want to be successful at something. And one of the things I decided to focus on then was the transportation industry. So I actually bought a semi truck, saved up some money, bought a used semi truck, and actually started doing long haul trucking. Got my CDL around 25, and started doing long haul trucking. Hired a driver, and went through that process and made a lot of mistakes doing that. And then I remember I had a friend years ago who told me, because we were doing long haul trucking, and he told me, hey, I know a lady who's a freight broker. She drives a white Porsche Panamera, and she's making $72,000 a month. I said, what? $72,000 a month as a, doing what again? So this was years ago. As a freight broker, I didn't know what that was. All I knew about was trucks. So I just kept that in my mind, in my mental Rolodex, just in the back somewhere. So I continued doing the trucking business. I think by 28 or so, I had about 9 different vehicles, some semis, some like box trucks, doing some expedited stuff. And then we started to run into some challenges. I had some customers who weren't paying on time. Had another partner that things weren't working out, and before I knew it, I found myself in something like $300,000 in debt, and and it was like, man, I don't know if I want to continue on with that, owning trucks and doing that whole thing. So I said to myself, I need to find a new situation. So around December of 2019, I said I need to find a new situation. I need to make a change, because I think keep going down this route, it's not going to be good. So I thought it up again. I said to myself, I remember my friend. What's up with freight brokering? I remember, one of my friends told me about freight brokering. He wasn't a freight broker, but he said you can make some pretty decent money doing it. So I said, well, let me look into it. So looked up for some courses, because one of the things I like to do is first I try to get educated on the topic, and I found your stuff, enrolled in Freight Broker Boot Camp, and then first thing I did was just dive head into it because my back was really up against the wall at the time, and I dove in, really just studied the material, and I committed myself that I'm gonna make it work. Because for me, I had to make it work. It wasn't a matter of like if or maybe I'll give it a try or anything like that. So I committed first, and then just went through the process, and was able to find some success with it. So that's just the quick backstory.
Yeah, perfect. No, that's really interesting. I mean, if I interviewed 100 people who became successful freight brokers, the stories are all going to be very diverse. But in a lot of cases, you're going to hear about some of the struggles they had, right, in finding their niche, meaning finding what business they were gonna get involved with, and some of them come through the path of trucking. A lot of people that join this business and are a part of my course and a part of my trainings are former truck drivers or own trucking companies. A lot of them are not, but a lot of them are. I'd say at least a third of the people that go through my course are probably either truck drivers or spouses of truck drivers. So it's interesting how you got here. The cool part is that, we have a lot of similarities. When I was younger, I looked at every business opportunity there was. I went from idea to idea, and I struggled, right? I've probably had, you only hear about the successes, but I've probably had 8 or 9 businesses that failed, right? Over the course of my career. Fortunately, I had a few that did really well, and you only really need 1 or 2 that do really well. And then from there, you can have a nice lifestyle and do the things you want to do. But all right, so cool. So you chose brokerage because you had a friend who told you that he knew somebody who was making a lot of money. Again, very similar to me. I was golfing with a good buddy of mine, and he told me about it. Somebody they had developed software for who was doing really, really well. And so it's weird how you hear about these things. And then you decided to jump in. You did some research. And so tell us a little bit about, you launched in June. Tell us about June, right? So I remember June was kind of slow, or maybe a little slower than you thought it was going to be. You really didn't move any freight in June, did you? Your first month, you really didn't do much.
We didn't move 1 load in June. And, I realized that the first thing that I really had to do was just really hone in my mindset on what I was going to do in business, because I said, look, if I want to make some money, the first thing I'm going to do is really become certain and really just focus my mindset on just this one task. So I had to, turn off a lot of, media and, all the stuff that was going on at the moment. I had to turn off a lot of the distractions that come about and really just focus on, okay, my daily tasks. What do I have to do every day in order to become successful? So my whole focus was prospecting, which is basically making contacts, minimum amount of contacts a day. And I really just had to hit it hard, especially with, you definitely providing the guidance and the game plan. So I said, okay, let me turn everything off and really just run the play. So you're my coach, and all I have to do is run the play, and if I run the play, it's gonna work. And I try to be adding stuff to it. So yeah, getting my mindset right that month really just helped by July to take off.
Yeah. So here, guys, the lesson, one of the biggest lessons you have to understand as a startup, and I don't care what industry you're in, okay? The lesson that Franklin just shared with you, which is shutting off all your distractions and getting super hyper focused on whatever your goal is, right? That's an absolute must. You can't do this business as a hobby. Okay. It's not a hobby. It's not a pastime. It's not something you're going to try. It's not something you're going to, that's not going to work. Okay. If you don't get really serious about this business or about any business that you're going to approach or start or launch or dive into, it's a surefire way to fail. Okay. You have to get super focused. You need to put those blinders on, forget about every other opportunity. I did a training not long ago where I talked about the power of saying no. And saying no, you have to say no to everything right now that is not income producing, focused on your exact business. And that's a really important lesson because it is a mindset shift. You do have to shut off the distractions. And I'm happy that you did that, because now after shutting off those distractions and getting through that first month, then all of a sudden we land in July and you land one of your first clients, right? So you land one of your first clients, and then tell us a little bit about that first month. Tell us what the results were and kind of maybe some lessons that you learned.
Yeah, so really, that first month after landing to get to the first client, I had to prospect. I knew that I was going to have to prospect because that's, the name of the game and the nature of the business. And there was, what else really is there to do?
You mean you couldn't just hire a whole bunch of agents and hope that they were going to generate revenue for you?
So hoping and wishing, that really doesn't work. You taught me that you really have to take control of your business, and so that's what I committed myself to doing. But we really focused on reaching out to my past client list from the brokers I bought. They had a list of clients that they've done business with in the past, and I had a network of people who I've done business in the past with, who were shippers and so on and so forth. And we were able to eventually land a client that was pretty big in a specific niche. And one of the things I actually really learned was, because at first I was really trying to just call everybody, builders, manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies, anyone. If they were a shipper, I'd call them. So you really kind of helped me focus on the fact that the riches are in the niches, and focus on kind of honing into one specific area or industry. And in our area, we actually have some specific niches that are core to our area, the Bay Area, that I was able to kind of reach out to and land with customers there. And then we really took off from there. And in the first month, we were able to do, I was able to net $25,000 in profit from the customers that we do business with. So.
Yeah. So what's interesting, just so you guys know, and so that you don't ask, because, I had a conversation with Franklin before this, he's not going to disclose the niche that he's working in. He has a very interesting and compelling niche that he's carved out and that he's working on, right? He's developing that niche. He's still very early days. Again, he started his business June 1st. We're only, we're not even into September yet. So he's very early on, but he's found a really interesting niche, right? And so he's expanding on that.
I had my own network of people that I had done business with in the past that I also reached out to as well. So we do business locally. So I had reached out to some shippers here in order to drum up that business.
But that wasn't a client of yours. That was, you hadn't done business with that client before, even as a carrier, but you got referred in from a previous client.
Exactly.
So see, what I want you guys to understand is that sometimes it's not a direct line. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it's, a referral into a client. Sometimes it's the pickup or drop location where you had done business with a prior client that you had never done business with that location before. There can be 100 different ways that you get clients or that you make new connections. But the key is he listened and he kept his radar up and his antennas up, and he continued to ask and prospect, even though, that person that he called really didn't have any business for him. He got the referral into this client that now he did over $25,000 in profit in 1 month, right? In July, after coming off of a blank June startup month, his first month, doing $25,000 in July, right? So I think, a couple things from that. Number one, find your niche. I preach this day in and day out, right? And whether you're in my Freight Broker Bootcamp online course, or whether you're a coaching or client of mine or a consulting client of mine, I'm always pitching riches are in the niches. You got to find your niche. And then secondly, you've got to get out there and prospect. You absolutely have to get out there and prospect. That means calling everybody you know, and if they can't do business with you, asking who they do know, and then calling anybody and everybody in your niche that you've identified. You've got to fill that funnel. You've got to start generating these conversations. The reason why people fail in freight brokerage really has nothing to do with experience. What it has to do with is they don't talk to enough people. They just don't talk to enough people. They think they talk to 10 or 20 people, and because they don't get their first client and they don't do $25,000 their first month, or it doesn't take off like a rocket ship, that it doesn't work. That's not the case. I had to make hundreds of calls. I'm an experienced sales guy. I've been doing sales since I was 22 years old, and I had to make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sales calls to get my first client. Okay, so trust me, it takes time. Now, that was a long time ago, and there are a lot of variables have changed. But the point is that I want you to listen carefully, because there's nuggets in this conversation. The reason why I wanted to have Franklin on is because I think that you will be able to understand. He can, number one, understand what you're going through, and I think you'll have a little bit better understanding of what he went through, right, to help guide you through this process. When you hear things from me, it has a certain amount of value, but you expect me to say these things. Franklin doesn't have a vested interest. He doesn't have a dog in this fight. He's really just telling his story and telling the truth and telling the things that happened to him. So let me ask you this. I want to hone in on this a little bit, because this was a thing. This is a question I get a lot from new students and people that launch their freight brokerages. And that is this: the whole concept of a startup launching into an agent-based business model. Because originally when we first started talking, your plan was, I've got a couple of agents, I'm launching the business, and these agents are going to go out there and really drum up business. And that was kind of a little, and you were going to grow that agency business, and that was going to be your process. That was going to be your plan. Right. And you realized pretty early on in June that those agents, while they may have been trying hard, for whatever reason, they weren't having success. And so we made a little bit of a shift. Tell me a little bit about that. Remember that process we went through?
Right. And the shift was, I had originally thought I want to build this large network of agents who would, prospect on behalf of the company and go down that route. So we talked about that, and the production wasn't where I needed it to be. Obviously, with everything that was going on, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, especially when everyone is talking about Corona and stuff isn't moving, rates are low, and a lot of that stuff feeds into your mind, and it feeds into your activity. So if you're thinking about it, about how bad trucking is right now, so most people check out, and most people, they're focusing on next year. So a lot of my agents, to be quite honest, that's where the mindset was. Everything that they're hearing is, about how slow it is, and about next year. So we talked about, I really got to take the reins, and if I wanna make it happen, it's really up to me to make it happen. So the first thing I did was really kind of pull things back, not rely on the agent model as much, and just focus on developing my core skill set in this business, developing my core skill set in this industry, and that was really just a process of what I talked about, building the mindset and repeatedly doing the activities daily that I had to do. So you talked about the reason that most people fail is because they don't make enough contacts. Absolutely, and the reason they don't make enough contacts is that they don't believe, and they're not certain that they actually want to do the business, or they don't believe that it's going to work. So once, you know, I was able to get myself to the position that I've got to make it happen. Then I went out and took action, and was able to last clients. So
Yeah. And the thing about it is this, it's not that he can't pursue the agent business model later, but when I recommended to him that he take ownership of the sales, the reason why I did that is because he has more control, right? He can't control how many phone calls or contacts or the things that are being said by an agent to a potential prospect. They're independent contractors. They don't work for him. They're not under his thumb. They're remote, right? And so you lose a lot of control with that. And as a startup, you've got to control every variable you can. So what I told Franklin is exactly what I've told every one of you that's asked me this question. I'm a startup. I want to go hire agents. And I tell you, I think it's a mistake. And here's why it's a mistake. It's not a mistake to have an agent-based business model, but it's a mistake to think that agents are going to build the foundation of your business. You have to, number one, build the foundation of your business. You've got to be able to know how to go get clients. You've got to lead the way. You've got to get clients, move freight, build your processes, build your billing, your collections, your technology, everything you're going to build up in order to create a product that is profitable regardless of agents, right? I did brokerage for 3 years internally before I hired my first agent. I think we were doing $12 million in sales before I hired we were doing over $6 million in sales before I hired my first agent. And so that's the direction I've taken Franklin, because I think that having that control on the input and filling your funnel, and then not only the input, but the delivery side, the actual fulfillment of the orders and the customer retention is a higher probability road to success. And again, it's not that you can't pursue agents. Agents is a great business model. I'd be a hypocrite to tell you that it's not, but it's different, right? And if you expect to go out, get your brokerage and go hire a bunch of newbie agents and your business is just going to blow up, I can tell you that that's a huge mistake, right? You're taking a huge risk. It might work, but I would tell you it's probably a very low percentage of success. And especially when you have a brand new business and brand new agents, people that don't have an established book of business, that's a huge gamble on your part. Whereas if you take control of your mindset, like Franklin said, and you take control of developing the skill set. I mean, Franklin and I have spent hours and hours talking about sales, prospecting, the whole kit and caboodle of sales. I mean, literally we spent hours talking about that and training and coaching and role playing and doing these things. And it's an investment of time and energy and resources, because you have to develop your skills, right? You have to develop your skills. And so it's kudos to Franklin for realizing that he had to invest very early in himself and his skills. And to the victor goes the spoils, because here he is doing, he did over $25,000 his second month. He's still doing business with that client. So tell us a little bit about August. I mean, because I want to be very transparent with the audience here about August. July was $25,000. And then what happened in August? Tell us a little bit about that.
So in July, one of my clients had they had a lot of freight to move, which is why we did the 25. August, it's still very busy. We'll still do, above $10,000, in the month. It's still very busy, and we should continue that throughout the rest of the year. So now, what I'm focused on is just continuing to add to my customer base, because as we talked about what the goal, what my overall goal is, so long term, I want to be able to develop a $10 million brokerage, netting $1 million in profit, so on and so forth, and grow and really build a business. One that's not necessarily one that I have to continue to exchange time for dollars in, right? So right now, we have, I have a situation where, I have to do a lot of the legwork, but, as we continue to grow and develop, to where I actually have a business that's able to operate without me, that's a valuable asset, that's saleable down the road. That's kind of where my focus is now, long term. But, August and looking through the rest of the year, we should be able to pull 6 figures from business, so I'm excited about that. But my long-term objective is where my is where the core of my focus.
Yeah. So if you heard what he just said, he's defined a goal. He's defined a goal, which is $10 million in revenue, $1 million in net to him on an annual basis. He wants to create a business that doesn't rely heavily on him and that is a saleable asset, something that he could continue to own for years or decide to sell. He's taken the similar route to me. He doesn't want to be attached to his business where it's just a high-paying job. And he's figured out a plan on how to get there, right? From where he was in June 1st to where he is now coming up on September 1st to where he'll be a year from now. So do you see the thought process that goes into this? It's not just, hey, I'm going to open up my brokerage and try. I give you a lot of kudos for that, but there's a lot of thought that goes into it and a lot of time and energy and resources. And I just want to be very honest with you guys. You got to take this seriously. If you take this seriously, right? This business can pay you millions and millions of dollars. I promise you. I absolutely promise you. The industry is huge. There's tons of opportunity out there, whether we're coming out of Corona or trucks are tight or trucks are loose or whatever the case may be. There's always opportunities if you have the right mindset and the right plan and you're willing to, and you're willing to be coachable, right? And you're willing to make the necessary changes that you need to make. So, all right, listen, advice to new brokers, right? Let's kind of wrap this up a little bit and we'll go into Q&A. What would be, and you may have already shared it, but what would be a couple of nuggets or pieces of advice, one or two pieces of advice you would give anybody who in the audience who's either just launched their brokerage or is just about to launch their brokerage? Or agency business, whichever. They're launching their business.
Right. So, my key advice and the thing that I, try to focus on daily is really honing in on the mindset first. Because I honestly believe that's where it begins. And I know some people kind of think, that it's sort of woo-woo, but I believe that it works. I've been doing it for a while, and it really does focus on, starting your day, really just honing in on what is it? Why are you in business? Why do you want to get into this business? And I don't think getting into the business to make money is a bad thing. Some people would perceive it that it is. Some people say I'm in business to change the world or whatnot, like some of the tech guys out here do. But for me, I'm in business to make money. And the way I make money is by serving the customer well, because if I serve them well, if I do good business, then the result of that is, financial success. So really honing in the mindset and believing, okay, I may not have all the skills now, and I may not know everything that I need to know right now, but here's where I want to go. And so I wrote down the goals. Me and you talked about, okay, what are the goals? And then I wrote down my daily activities on how I'm going to get and reach those goals. And then I just made a commitment. I wrote it out on a card. I printed it out. I put it on the wall in my office. What my daily activities are, what I want my revenue to be. I have it, on my office. And then I said, okay, I committed myself to doing the daily tasks that would get me there. If it's to do $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month, I got on my wall. I do $20,000 a month on my wall. I do $1 million a year in business. I have on my wall, I wrote it out, and it just builds my mindset, reinforces my mindset. So, and I put myself in an environment where, I'm not going to get distracted by all the negative. And once I do that, then the actions I think become automatic. So if you're thinking, successful thoughts, you'll produce successful actions. So that's my advice. I think a lot of people when they're first starting out, they'll ask their friends, hey, what do you think about the freight brokerage business? They don't really know. A lot of people will ask, a friend or a family member, advice on should they go into business, and that person's not really a business person, and they'll give you advice on what they don't know about. So, if it's your goal and if it's really something that you want to do, which you can do it, because as Dennis said, it's a huge industry. There's tremendous opportunity. I don't care if people are saying, well, automation, artificial intelligence is coming in, and so on and so forth. There's really abundance out there for anyone who's willing to go out and solve problems for the customer and give, good service and that attention to detail that customers are really looking for. I mean, there's a lot of money to be made. You can make millions, Dennis already pointed out. So that's kind of the advice that I'll give. Put yourself in a success environment and don't let any of the negativity and distractions really get into you. And then the actions, I mean, they'll be automatic. So that's kind
You just reminded me of my startup days, right? Back in 2003, I got married on September 27th, 2003. I incorporated my brokerage on October 3rd, right? So literally, and I don't advise that of anybody because it puts a lot of stress. But ultimately, my point is that when I told my family and friends and people that I knew, my inner circle, that I was going to start a freight brokerage, they looked at me like I had a big green eyeball sticking out of the middle of my forehead. And they said, what in the hell do you know about logistics or freight brokerage? Are you crazy? Why are you doing this? Are you nuts? Go get a job. Go get a job with benefits, or go get something that's going to pay you a salary or an hourly. And I remember there was nobody in my corner. The only one that was in my corner was obviously my wife. My wife has supported me from day one. But even my in-laws were kind of looking at me like I was crazy, and they've always been pretty supportive. But yeah, you've got to block all that out. If you have a vision, if you've got a goal, you have to flip that switch. You got to block out all that negativity. And I think the mindset is absolutely the place you have to start. And then from there, you got to follow a process. That's, a perfect timing for this. And I'll do my quick infomercial here. If you're on this live and you're curious about becoming a freight broker or freight agent, check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. It's the same course that Franklin went through. I've had over 8,000 students now go through that course. We offer a 60-day, 100% money back guarantee. It's freightbrokerbootcamp.com. You can check that out. Again, been in business over a decade with that course and have trained over 8,000 students.